Welcome to Recalculating Small Business. Like its award-winning book, Recalculating is dedicated to small business in America. Your hosts are Don Mazzella and Dan Perkins. Don Mazzella is the editor-in-chief of the Small Business Digest. Dan Perkins is a registered investment advisor with 43 years' experience in managing money.
Dan Perkins here, your co-host, along with Don Mazzella of Recalculating for Small Business. Our radio program is dedicated to you, helping the small business owners increase their profits. We draw our name from Recalculating, voted the best small business book of 2017 by the Independent Press. In this book, it features ways to grow your small business. Now, here's Don Mazzella.
You know, Dan, even though I have an MBA, I have a special fondness for our next guest, Laurie Pickard. She's founder of the No-Pay MBA website, www.nopayMBA.com, and author of Don't Pay for Your MBA, the faster, cheaper, better way to get the business education you need. It's a fascinating book, and she's a fascinating woman, and we welcome her to the program now.
Thanks for having me.
Laurie, tell us first a little bit about your background, then a little bit about how you came up with this idea of No-Pay MBA, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So I started my career in international development, which is a field that works on poverty alleviation around the world. So I started out as a Peace Corps volunteer, already having an undergraduate degree, and I had a master's, but it was in geography, which doesn't really lend itself directly to any particular job. So I knew a lot about the world, but didn't have a lot of grounding in business. And as I got started working, I became very interested in business as a way of alleviating poverty, and felt like I really needed the kind of training that people get in an MBA program, but I didn't want to get another master's, didn't want to go into debt. So when I found out that some of the top universities in the world are giving away versions of their courses online, I decided that that was the way that I would get my version of an MBA, which would be to put together these courses and assemble the equivalent of an MBA, but without going into debt to do it.
So you've assembled it, and now what are you doing with it?
Well, when I decided to assemble it, I also decided to blog about this project. So in addition to kind of creating my own MBA, I also blogged about the process and created this blog called the No-Pay MBA, which eventually evolved into a community of people who are also pursuing independent business education, and most recently was the foundation for this book that I wrote called Don't Pay for Your MBA. And that's essentially a guide to other people on how to put together the resources that are out there for free and at very low cost to get that business education that you need.
Well, you know, in today's world, you may, I know you don't know, my wife is a Harvard MBA, and I knew her when she was going through the MBA program. I hold an MBA from NYU, and the difference in the two programs, the NYU program was based on hard facts. They had some really great teachers, and at Harvard, they taught the students how to break apart problems and solve them. Two totally different approaches. Then we got into the world of theoretical, and now we're going back to the world of practical. Would you consider your MBA a practical MBA approach, or what are the main elements of it?
I love this question, and I love the way you framed this about the differences in MBA programs. And I think there's of course there's a role for both of those different kinds of approaches. And the beautiful thing about designing your own program is that you can kind of follow your own path. So if you prefer kind of a case study approach and this more picking apart a problem, you can do that. Or if you prefer kind of a quantitative, numbers-based approach, you can do that too. I would say that my personal inclination is more towards the problem-solving approach. So I definitely took a lot of classes on entrepreneurship and classes that did kind of teach me to think strategically, and those classes are out there. But I also did try to push myself to take some of those quantitative classes that don't come quite as easily to me. classes on finance and valuation and things of that nature.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Dan now, because Dan's the perfect example of the self-made, educated person. Dan, it's all yours.
Thank you. I'm curious about your program. Normally, in an MBA, you need a sponsoring institution that awards the degree. Who was your sponsoring institution?
Well, I should be clear that I don't have an MBA degree. So what I'm advocating is not an MBA degree, and people who are listening shouldn't think that they can kind of get an MBA in this way. However, it is an education that is pretty much equivalent to an MBA. So for a person who needs the skills but doesn't need that piece of paper, this is a great way to get those skills without going into debt.
Which can be significant.
Yes, it can be a significant amount of debt. And in a lot of industries and for a lot of career paths, the MBA is a nice to have, but it's not a must have. So who wants to go $100,000, $200,000 or more into debt for something that's just nice to have?
And may not actually get you a job.
Exactly.
So how did you identify the courses that you wanted to take to fit your style of the MBA that you wanted?
So I started by doing a lot of research on the curriculum pages of top MBA programs just to kind of see like what is in an MBA program. And then I would take that and I would match it with what was available on the massive open online course platforms. So these days there are several platforms where universities are offering these online versions of their courses, and these are often free or very low cost courses that anybody can take. So I would look, on the curriculum page of the Wharton School of Business and see, okay, the first semester of the first year of business school includes marketing, it includes finance, it might include accounting, and then I would go on the MOOC platform and find those courses. And in some cases, I was able to find them from the very same university whose curriculum page I was consulting.
So you actually, I'm fascinated by this because I worked with a professor at the University of South Florida in developing their online education.
Mm-hmm.
It was primarily designed for students, non-resident students, day trippers, I guess they were called at one time, who are commuters who don't live on campus and either have jobs or they live at home or some other restriction that are financial. But in putting that together, I don't remember any time that we were making that course content free. It was always paid for at equal to or higher tuition rates for residency. So why would the college be willing to, or the university be willing to give away the content that you're talking about for free?
Well, this is something that is also, it boggles my mind as well, but this is something that started happening around 2011, that there was a trend towards universities creating these versions of their courses that were just, and continue to be available to the public. I think it's a combination of, marketing, kind of increasing the brand reputation of the school, and then also in many cases it fits with the overall mission of the school, which is to educate not just its own students, but the wider world. And then I think, the more cynical part of me thinks that what universities are selling isn't necessarily education. It might just be the sheepskin. And if the content is out there and available for free, then, why do you even need that? But the fact remains that many universities are just giving away their content in these really great courses.
Now, you said a moment ago that some of the coursework is not free. It is a low cost. What was the most expensive course you had to pay for?
Well, so this has been kind of an evolving thing. So when I started doing this, you couldn't pay for any part of a course if you wanted to. All these courses were being offered for free. I did end up paying towards the end of my education for, I think I paid $350 for a series of courses on the topic of finance. These days, the way this works usually is that it's kind of a freemium model. where courses are generally free to audit, free to watch the lectures, free to read course materials, and then certain parts of the course might be paid. Having a graded assignment could be paid, for example, and getting a certificate at the end of the course would be paid as well.
So what would you guess is the percentage of the coursework that you took that was free versus pay?
I would say 90% of the coursework that I did was completely free.
Do you think that the universities understand what you did to them?
I don't think that they think I did anything to them. They're giving away their content. I chose to put it together. As you said, nobody's standing behind, no institution is standing behind me and saying, yes, this person has an MBA. So I think they're kind of indifferent to that. I think what they're saying is, okay, this is an interesting way for somebody to use this material, but it's not really, what we're selling. We're happy to give this away, and so we're happy for people to use it as they choose.
So when you take a course, an online, let's say an online course, you take an online course and you complete the course, because you're not paying for it, do you get any recognition from the institution that you've successfully completed the?
No, if you're not paying for it. Yeah, so if you don't pay for the course, you wouldn't get any kind of recognition like that. However, if you pay the $35 or $50 course fee, which of course is much less than what you would pay for a credit-bearing course, which could be in the realm of $3,000 for a course. But if you pay that modest fee, you'll get a certificate that says, your name, this person completed this course, and it may even have your score on it.
So, so it has a score, and if you look at the course in the catalog, it has if you Don, can you turn your mic off?
Yes, I'm doing that now.
Thank you. So when you sign up for the course or look at the course, if you took that course at the university, it has a certain number of credits that you could have earned taking the course.
That's
and
right.
So if you finish the course, let's say you paid the $50 or $35 course fee, and you took the course and you got a passing grade, can you create your own credit file so that you can see if I need 275 credits to get the equivalent of an MBA, that by doing this coursework, getting the fee and getting the certificate of completion with a grade, you're able to then construct and represent to a potential employer that you have successfully completed this work.
So that's essentially what I am proposing in my book and in my website. Now, the thing to be careful about is that you're not always comparing apples to apples with these courses. So increasingly, universities are not providing just a course that is exactly the same as what they're offering on campus, although in some cases they are. But usually these courses are shorter, 4 weeks as opposed to a 16-week semester. And then they might offer a series of courses where if you take all 3 or all 4 of the courses in a particular series, that might be equivalent to what you would get on campus. But I would really warn people against trying to construct the MBA in that way, looking at credit hours as the important unit, because first of all, these courses aren't transferable for credit, except in very particular cases. But I also think that there's a smarter, better way to construct an MBA, which is to focus on skills, to focus on competencies, and then when you're ready to go and present that education to an employer, my recommendation is that people put it in the context of work experience, and that people in the course of their education find ways to put the education into practice and then represent that to the employer rather than coming with a stack of certificates that says, I completed this course and this course and this course. Don't you think I have something that's equivalent to an MBA?
Mm-hmm.
Dan Perkins here from Recalculating.biz with your featured book. I want to tell you about a recent interview I had with Bob Bethel, a turnaround specialist with lots of success in small business. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for small business. He tells us of his life successes and failures that have made him and his clients so successful. Over the years, Bob has brought 77 companies back from the brink and changed them into thriving, profitable businesses. His energy is amazing, and at 74, he proves that you can still have a great deal to give others if you just try. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. One insight struck me was that most companies do not have a plan. The old Chinese proverb says, "If you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there," is true today. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating.biz featured book. Dan Perkins here with your Recalculating Small Business tip of the day. Did you know that a candle can be an energy saver for home and office? An old-fashioned candle can be a new-fashioned energy saver and at the same time provide a warm glow to any home office. Adding a candle seems like a silly thing to do, but it can help check for drafts. You can use the candle to test if new windows are needed. Here's how. First, take a roll of blue painter's tape and tear off pieces and put them on your left arm. Pass the candle around the opening and mark the spots around each window and door where the candle flame flickers. When you have finished your test, step back and see if you have tape around all of the window or only one side. The more tape you have on the window, the more money you will save by replacing those windows and doors. Check out Recalculating.biz for more useful small business suggestions. This has been Dan Perkins with your small business tip of the day.
Welcome back to Recalculating, the program dedicated to American small business. Now it's time to bring together our two experts, Dan Perkins and Don Mazzella, as they discuss things that are happening now that are affecting your business success.
What's interesting about this conversation to me is that probably 25 years ago, I used to write a column, the MoneyWise column for Entrepreneur magazine. And I said at that time that I felt that the cost of college is going to continue to rise, but as it increases, the number of students that can afford to go to college will diminish. And here we are, 25 years later, hearing story after story of college students who are coming out with their MBAs with $200,000 in college debt. And I'm wondering if in your longer-term vision, wondering whether your vision is that what you have put together, that at some point in time, some college or university will take that credit and award you a master's degree.
You know, I think it's definitely within the realm of possibility. For me, that is something that if that were offered to me, that I might pursue it. But has never been my goal to get that recognition. It's been my goal to have those skills and to be able to put them into practice on the job. So I almost don't care about having an actual MBA. I care that I have the knowledge.
Okay. And so have you put that knowledge to work in a job or finding a job or expanding a job?
I have, in multiple ways. So first of all, when I started this program, I was working for an agency, and I began using those skills right away and was able to move into a role. I was in kind of a administrative role, was able to move into a private sector-facing role. I was working for a government agency and was able to work on partnership initiatives with the private sector, because what I was learning was, helped me to be able to have conversations where I was able to take the perspective of business. So it was immediately helpful in my job, and I ended up getting a promotion and moving into a different role because of it. So that was pretty cool. I also used this information or this knowledge to run my own business. So I have this website, and I was able to convert it from a simple blog site into an e-commerce site, and have continued to use the insights from my courses in the running of my business.
So what is your business?
Oh, go ahead.
What is your business now? What are you doing to generate money?
So currently it's a blog site, but then it's also a monetized blog site. So it gets affiliate ad revenue. And I also briefly offered a product that was kind of, I guess, a service to people who wanted to experience the networking part of an MBA. That didn't really fly as a business offering, but I learned a lot about it, and I kind of framed it as a learning experience. So that was really pretty interesting as well, to have my final experience of my business education be actually launching a product into the marketplace and running a business. Even though it didn't end up being a hugely successful business venture, it was a great learning experience. And then I'm also doing some consulting now for another company.
So have you thought about the possibility on your blog site as being a resource of for a fee, you can help people put together their own MBA program, where to go, what courses to take, what universities to work with, that you can short circuit the research process for individual students and get paid a fee for that?
Yeah, so that was something that in this product that I launched, that was part of the idea of it, was to kind of be the advisor to help people through that process. And what I discovered is, much like myself, people in this market are extremely price sensitive. So what people wanted, and I launched a couple different things around the same time. I had a short handbook that included a list of courses, and then I had this networking feature, and I had some consulting or coaching type services. And what I saw again and again was that people wanted the handbook. They wanted the list of courses. And that was what really convinced me that what was here, what people want is a book. So I ended up writing that book, where it's the guide to, this is the people who are interested in this kind of education are, like I said, extremely price sensitive and are excited about doing something on their own.
I'm just curious how is the book being received?
I don't know yet. That's one of the interesting things about book publishing, a traditional book publishing. If I did go with a traditional publisher as compared to digital publishing or kind of the whole world of online, where online is instantaneous and you get feedback right away and you can go to production so fast. The traditional world of book publishing is really slow. So the book has been out since November, and we're just starting to get the first sales data now. So I don't even really know how it's been received.
I've been there and done that. I understand exactly what you're going through. Okay, back to you, Don.
Well, I just have a quick question, Laurie. Sometimes you go for an MBA program for the contacts. When you go to schools like Wharton, the Tuck at Dartmouth, etc., you're really going for the lifetime of contacts that make the difference, Stanford, etc., because they tend to help each other. How does your program address it, or it does not address it? This, what I consider a very important question.
Yes, this is a very important question. And I do think this obviously is an extremely big component of the value proposition of an MBA program. So what I recommend to people is certainly not to ignore the networking side of a business education, but rather to kind of look at what your personal goals are and to make a habit of strategically adding contacts to your network that are very relevant to what you want to do. So even though you don't end up having that kind of lifelong network of other business school graduates from your school, that you make an intentional habit of building your network and of creating a great network of contacts that matches your particular goals.
Tell us again your website and how people can reach you.
My website is www.nopaymba.com. I also have a Facebook page and a Facebook group. So on Facebook, No-Pay MBA. And the best way to reach me is through the contact form on my website.
Okay. Yeah, I have one more question, then I'll turn it back to Dan. Do you have any reference, Sal, yet of people who have tried your program and have been successful at it or feel successful at it?
Yes. So the book is actually filled with anecdotes about people who have done a portion or the entire program that I'm recommending. And that's another really nice thing about this approach, is that you don't have to do an entire MBA's worth of courses to be successful or to reach the goals that you've set out for yourself. And many of the people that I've worked with have found that they get the most value out of just a few courses or a few internship type experiences or experiences at work where they volunteered for a new assignment on the basis of what they've learned in the online classroom. And that doesn't require, of course, completing an entire 2-year program or 3-year program and spending a ton of money. I've seen many people be successful just taking a few targeted courses and then kind of launching themselves from there.
Dan, back to you.
Thank you. So what was the most, I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to say it. Was there any one particular institution that seemed to excel at what you were trying to do, and you got a significant amount of your content from them?
I took several courses from the Wharton School of Business. They have a very impressive online offering, which is really, really great. Another school that has a lot of courses that I think are really good, especially in strategy, is the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia. Another institution that people should look out for, they started offering courses after I had completed most of my coursework, but the University of Illinois has actually a complete MBA that is an actual MBA program that people can get credit for and actually earn a degree. That costs a lot more money, but they've made that entire course catalog available for free. So all those courses are excellent, and they're the same courses that the degree students are taking.
What is the cost for that University of Illinois online degree program?
Don't quote me on this number, but I think it's around $22,000.
Wow.
But people would have to look up, what the precise figure is. But still a significant savings on a traditional MBA.
Oh, agreed. But as Don pointed out, yes, Don?
No, I'm sorry, Dan. I'm stepping over you today, but you first.
I'm just curious as to, Don talked about one of the benefits of an MBA program is who you meet, who you learn, who you establish contact and relationships with. That's kind of hard to do when you do it online by yourself, isn't it?
It can be, but there are certain avenues that people can pursue to try to meet other people who are also taking online courses. And some of these courses have robust discussion forums. Some of them even have group assignments or teamwork that's kind of built into the course. So you can establish some of those types of student-to-student relationships in the online classroom. But then, of course, the networking with people who are kind of the bridges to your future career prospects, that's an effort that is not easily accomplished just by taking an online course, and I fully recognize that. But again, I encourage people to make a habit of doing that kind of networking and doing it as a student, as a student would do, to say, hey, I'm interested in what you do. I'd like to meet up with you, or I'd like to interview you briefly on the phone and learn more about the work that you do. I think that's an extremely effective strategy for growing your network.
Good. Thank you. Okay, Don?
Dan, I was going to ask her, an MBA program is made up of many different parts. What have you found has been the most effective course? Is it finance? Is it marketing? Is it personnel? What is the most effective course that you and your and your various clients have found over the years?
Well, for me, as someone who, as I said earlier, is much more of a poet than a quant in the MBA admissions language, I found that the course that I took on finance, the very first course, which was an introduction to finance, was a total mind-expanding and mind-changing course for me. It felt like it was almost like learning a foreign language, that all these concepts that, a lot of vocabulary that I had heard before, things like return on investment or net present value, terms that I might have been vaguely aware of, suddenly became clear to me. And so that was amazing. That in one semester-long course, I felt like I kind of got a totally different perspective on how the world works.
Well, Dan, we've come to the end of another fascinating interview. Laurie, please tell us your website and your book and how people can reach you again, one last time.
Sure. The book is called Don't Pay for Your MBA, and it is available wherever books are sold. My website is www.nopaymba.com, and the best way to reach me is through the contact form on that website.
We've been talking with Laurie Pickard, who's come up with an interesting concept. She will be a link to her website will be on our website, recalculating.biz tonight. Thank you so much for being with us today, Laurie.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com.
Dan Perkins here from Recalculating.biz with your featured book. I want to tell you about a recent interview I had with Bob Bethel, a turnaround specialist with lots of success in small business. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for Small Business. He tells us of his life successes and failures that have made him and his clients so successful. Over the years, Bob has brought 77 companies back from the brink and changed them into thriving, profitable businesses. His energy is amazing, and at 74, he proves that you can still have a great deal to give others if you just try. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. One insight struck me was that most companies do not have a plan. The old Chinese proverb says, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there, is true today. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating.biz featured book. Dan Perkins here with your Recalculating.biz small business tip of the day. So you formed your business and you used an LLC. Do you really know what you want to do and how to get there? Not without a business plan. An old Chinese saying, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there. So here is your Recalculating.biz small business tip of the day. There are a lot of great books on building business plans. I suggest you start simple. As your business grows, you can become more elaborate. I recommend the Business Plan for Dummies, available in local bookstores or at Amazon. If you know nothing about business plans, then a complicated plan may well scare you away from doing one at all. You used to be able to do things by the seat of your pants, but no more. Don't be a dummy. Get a book, and you'll be smarter for it. This has been your Recalculating.biz small business tip of the day. I'm Dan Perkins.
Welcome back to Recalculating, the program dedicated to American small business. Now it's time to bring together our two experts, Dan Perkins and Don Mazzella, as they discuss things that are happening now that are affecting your business success.
Dan, I'm really happy to have with us our next guest. Eyal Lifshitz is absolutely one of the most creative people I know. I've known him for a long time. He's here to talk about his company, which is a fintech company, and what's happening in the world. Eyal, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Don, and appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Well, it's true. I'm getting too old to remember my lies. Anyway, Eyal, tell us about your company, about you, and where people can reach you.
Sure, would be happy to. My company is called BlueVine, blue like the color blue, and Vine, one word, BlueVine. We provide working capital financing online to small businesses. We have two products, invoice factoring, and then also a business line of credit. We deliver both of these products online, and we try to make it as easy as possible for small businesses to access capital. My background, I worked in venture capital before starting BlueVine. This was 4.5 years ago. I worked at Greylock Partners out of Israel and Europe. And then prior to that, I worked in consulting, and then I am an engineer by education. So I'm dangerous with code as well. That's my background.
You know, it seems to me that a lot of companies are being formed and run by engineers. I wish I were one, but I'm not. But anyway, Dan, you get to ask the first question.
Well, that's interesting, Don, because my background before I got into the brokerage business many decades ago was that of an engineer. So, and I got in the finance business and becoming a writer and the other things. I want to ask you a question about what's going on. And when I say what's going on, there seems to be an explosion of fintech companies. Now, we've had other people on this show, and they talk about how with the crash of 2008, the major banks got out of the small business lending side because they perceived it to be too much risk. And as the economy started to turn, they couldn't see the forest for the trees. And so fintech companies started to get formed. But I'm wondering if one of the reasons also why so many fintech companies have been formed is the underperformance, by and large, of hedge funds and private equity funds not being able to deliver the historical returns. Many of them closed down, and the people are now looking for something else to do.
It's a good
question.
What
Do you think?
So I think in part you're right. Part of what enabled this asset class, and this is with respect to some of the lenders, not all of them, but is the lenders who are known as marketplace lenders, where they get their capital from investors. Historically, those were called peer-to-peer, but increasingly those are all being called marketplace lenders today, and they source their capital from investors. The majority are institutional, not retail investors. And you're right, the availability of capital on these platforms, part of it has been driven by investors chasing returns because interest rates were not high or low. And as an asset class, they found this to be an attractive one, which was not correlated to other investments that they were making, and was interesting for them. So in part, yes, part of the reason why you saw more lenders, marketplace lenders being successful is due to the availability of capital and due to interest from investors. But that all would not be happening if there wasn't enough market demand, right? If there wasn't demand from borrowers who were either consumers or small businesses. And companies like mine, by the way, are not marketplace lenders. We are a balance sheet lender, so we actually don't have investors on our platform. We source our capital from either banks or asset managers, but they provide it as debt to our company rather than an investment. So we run our business differently. What we share with the marketplace lenders is the borrower demand. And so you're right in part, but the first part was that there was an increasingly large market opportunity of underserved segments, whether they're consumers or small businesses.
And I think that from what we can gather in other discussions we've had with fintech lenders, this is not intended to be a political statement, but more or less pretty much a statement of fact. The election of Donald Trump, regardless of your politics, has certainly turned the psychology of the economy around, where we're finding people who are interested and willing to take some risk that they haven't been for a long period of time. There's more people interested in starting their own businesses, and there are more businesses for sale as a generation transfers to another generation. But it seems to me that the rebirth of the economy, and Goldman is saying that they think that GDP will be about 4% next year. Mr. Trump says he thinks it could be 5 or 6. I'm thinking that it's going to be more than 4 because we're already at 3.5, and he's only hasn't been in office a full year. So the full magnitude of what he's doing, the power of the office, has not begun to totally materialize. So that I think 4 is probably very reasonable, and somewhere between 4.5 and 5 GDP is more likely what's going to happen next year. And a 4.5% to 5% GD market, I would think there'd be a lot of people interested in talking to you.
Look, I mean, I think from our standpoint, and I'm not qualified to comment on the economy, but we are seeing that there is continued growth in the markets. And, you know, for us, in this type of economy, we are financing growth for our customer base, which is small businesses, and we are continuing to see a strong market there. And then in addition, to your point around capital markets, we do see good interest right now in capital markets and interest in continuing to support companies like ours. So from our standpoint, without getting to political affiliation, for us right now, market conditions are quite good.
Do you see, as a result of the change in the economy, do you see that the major banks, who I'm sure have realized for almost a year that they made the wrong call by not being in this business, do you see them coming back and trying to compete with you, or have they basically ceded that market to you?
So if you look historically, banks were never that concentrated or invested in this segment anyway. We are now, if you look at the statistics, we are now in post-recession highs, even I think higher than we were before the recession in terms of approval rates for financing for small businesses. Today, the latest report that I saw, banks are at a record high of 25% approval rate. Now, record high of 25% approval rate, in my mind, is not that high still, right? And so while it is higher than they were, which is around 10 to 15% during the recession, it still leaves a huge underserved market. If only one out of 4 businesses are getting approved by a bank for financing, that still leaves out 75% of the market. Do I see them continuing to increase their approval rates? Maybe, to some extent, but I don't see them ever kind of satisfying the entire demand in this market. And primarily that is because there are structural reasons why banks are not well situated to serve this market. Frankly, for them, right now, the way that they work, it is not economical to really underwrite and service small loans. This is not just about the regulatory environment or even their appetite for risk. Even from an economic standpoint, it's just not an economically viable segment for them to serve the majority of it. And so for us, it's hard to say exactly, how much, at this point, how much more of the market they will serve, but I don't see them kind of getting into 40 or 50%. They're 25% after taking them a year to move from 23 to 25, right? So still a huge underserved segment.
So what is your approval rate?
Our approval rates are higher than 50% today. And I would say that we as well don't serve the entire market. For us, we have 2 products that we address the markets with, and they are able to fulfill some of the demand, but there is a whole market out there where I would say that between us and other participants in this alternative lending market, the approval rates get to around 80% or so. And part of that is the right product structure, making sure that we have the right product structure. And today we have 2 products. We don't have the broad suite of services that we'd like to have, but we are working towards. But there are other companies that provide products that we don't have. And part of it is also just making sure that we are pricing the risk appropriately, which I think we are, and the element of risk that we're comfortable taking. But it's certainly, we are a different animal than a bank. Our cost structure and our ability to use technology to underwrite small businesses in a much more efficient manner makes it economical for us to serve businesses that a bank wouldn't.
So let me go one step further and use a term to illustrate a point that may not represent your organization, but maybe you can help me figure out if there is an equivalent organization in the fintech area. One of the areas that presented potential of substantial returns in the mortgage market were the subprime borrowers. They paid a much higher price to borrow the money, and we knew that there were going to be failures. But there were people who are willing to, and companies who were willing to take the risk of doing the subprime lending because the reward was significant. Are there subprime lenders in your fintech space?
The answer is yes. There are subprime lenders in the fintech space as well. I would say it maybe differently. I think there are subprime lenders in the alternative lending space. I think fintech and alternative lending are not necessarily the same thing. We can get into what that means. Fintech, they are, I'd say, less subprime. I think there are more non-fintech alternative lenders that do subprime in small business, but there certainly are some that do that. I think in small business financing, underwriting itself is complicated, and the fact that a bank would not approve a small business does not make that business subprime. There are other considerations, and we can get into more of those. But for example, if you are a newer business, if you are less than 3 years since you've been established, the likelihood of the bank approving you is not high. You could actually be very good credit from our vantage point, but just from the fact that your time in business is less than the credit box that the bank feels comfortable with, then you wouldn't be eligible. Similarly, with industries that they don't understand very well, and we have become more comfortable in underwriting. And so some of these things in small business as opposed to consumers doesn't just imply credit worthiness. There is other segments that banks don't underwrite and are not willing to serve who could be actually quite good credit. So there's kind of an arbitrage or a gap in the market even from that standpoint.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com.
Dan Perkins here with your Recalculating Small Business Tip of the Day. Have you ever tried to find someone to help you in a big box store? Your time is valuable, and if you have a question, you need someone to give you an answer. Do you find yourself wandering from aisle to aisle trying to find someone to help you? Finding help is a problem in almost every big box store chain, regardless of what they're selling: TVs, clothes, even nuts and bolts. Greater customer service can differentiate a small business from a big box competitor. When customers can't find someone to help them, they take their frustration out on the store. They are angry. A smart small business owner makes it a point to be attentive, helpful, and polite. May I help you are the sweet words of success. Check out recalculating.biz for more useful small business suggestions. This has been Dan Perkins with your Small Business Tip of the Day.
Welcome back to Recalculating, the program dedicated to American small business. Now it's time to bring together our two experts, Dan Perkins and Don Mazzella, as they discuss things that are happening now that are affecting your business success.
But it would seem, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, it would seem that the traditional lending through banks, how can I say this politely, are stodgy, and that they're not really keeping up with the times of what's going on today, and so that they're behind the time. Is that a fair analysis?
I would probably agree. I don't know what goes under the hood at banks. I haven't been given the privilege to look at it, but in terms of how their actions play out and what I've heard, then you'd be right. I think alternative financing companies and particularly fintech companies are investing a lot around technology and innovating on these fronts in order to be able to make faster decisions, more accurate decisions, and also ultimately better service to the borrowers. So I would agree with you that technology companies are more advanced on the tech side. Yes, that's what we have.
Well, that was the other thing I wanted to bring up was that I believe, based on the people that we've talked to, you are using technology in a dramatically different way than the traditional banks, and you approach things from a different perspective. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that perhaps the traditional banking institutions are behind the times in the use of technology, and as a result are going to be stingier with their credit approvals because they've got a box that has a certain shape to it, and if you don't fit within that box, they're not going to touch you. Where your box is more soft-sided and expandable, theirs is rigid steel.
I would probably agree there. And part of it is also refining, even if we have a box, it's about refining our box or having that box, kind of on more dimensions, if you will, right? But fencing in our credit, not just on 1 or 2 or 3 dimensions, but on multiple variables, and allowing us to make more accurate decisions based on more information that we're able to gather rather than making it a more simplistic approach. Then yes, of course, becoming more sophisticated in how you assess something rather than taking a more kind of rigid sort of, a listed approach. Yes, of course, you're able to make better decisions.
I'm curious, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot with this next question, but I just feel compelled to ask it. Why do you think that the traditional banking sector has been so reluctant to become more contemporary?
So I don't know if reluctant is the right word, right? Part of it is capabilities, incentives. So, and part of it is frankly like legacy and history. So number one, I think, the level of regulatory burden that banks need to adhere to is a higher level than we do, right? And part of that is for them to, especially the larger banks, for them to change some of their policies and the level of scrutiny that would require is a pretty big overhaul for them. Like if they suddenly, if their credit policy changes and all of a sudden their portfolio looks very different, I think that is not something that is easy for them to go and explain to the regulator. I think they are under a different level of scrutiny than we are. They are just bigger. They're bigger and they move slower. So that's one thing. I think another thing is kind of the incentives internally, right? In terms of what you have to gain versus what you have to lose. We are smaller, more agile companies. While we are very responsible in how we manage our credit policies and compliance, we have, for example, more tolerance to losses. Okay, why? Because, for example, BlueVine, we are a venture-funded company. The goal of our investors is to build a very large company here. And, for example, we are sometimes willing to test things around credit, like expanding our credit box, but are willing to tolerate for a period of time higher losses. And our scale and our ability to test some of these things in a contained manner allow us to be more creative and evolve quicker. I don't know if a larger bank has that flexibility and agility. That's part of it, right? And for them to do something and then learn that it was a mistake at their scale could be significantly punitive. And when you think about that, that ties into their incentives. Why is it worthwhile for them to do something where the results could be disastrous? And it's not like, and I think that's kind of the other part of it, they do participate in the market, but just in other ways, okay? For example, our warehouse facilities, we have banks that have provided us credit. So it's not like they don't get some of the upside of this market as well. They do. They've just found a way that fits better to their current operations.
Just to make sure that our listeners understand, a fintech company is not a bank and not subject to the same regulators and regulatory agencies that govern FDIC insured banks. Is that true?
That is true. And maybe one point of that, not all banks are governed the same. Different banks that hold different level of assets have different level of scrutiny. Banks that hold over $500 billion have a higher degree of scrutiny versus a smaller bank. There are some banks that intentionally keep their assets under the books below a certain threshold not to be exposed to higher scrutiny. So that's why, for example, when I mentioned before, the bigger banks are lending at 25% today, smaller banks are actually lending at a higher rate, right? Because their level of scrutiny is not to the same extent.
Do you ever anticipate that fintech companies will take deposits from retail or institutional?
Well, you see that some fintech companies have actually applied for a banking license, whether it's Square or SoFi, which I don't recall if they've actually pulled it out, but some fintech companies have actually applied for a banking license, ultimately, becoming banks themselves. Do I think that will be the natural progression? To some extent, I think yes. I think whether they become banks themselves or offer products that resemble like a bank, I think some of that will happen over time.
I hate to break it up. Eyal, a wonderful discussion. Eyal, your website again and how people can reach you?
So we are online at www.bluevine.com. BlueVine, one word, color blue, and Vine. And there's also a phone number on the website. We're an online company, but always have folks here. Would be happy to speak with any prospective borrower or anyone that's interested in our services.
A link to your website will be up tonight on recalculating.biz. Thank you so much, Eyal. Thank you so much for being with us. It's always a pleasure. And I always learn something. I hope our audience does as well.
Thank you very much. Thanks again for having me.
Dan, before we go any further, I want our audience to know about your new runaway hit book on Alzheimer's disease and how it affects teenagers. Please tell us about it.
Yeah, Don, thank you. The book is called Why Can't Grammy Remember Me? It's a book written primarily for children ages 9 to 12, but really needs to be read by the entire family. And what I try to do is I try to take the subject matter of dementia and the challenges to a different level in the form of a mystery story with my two little detectives, two little girls, Hudson and Charlotte. And it really creates a breakthrough opportunity for small children and parents and families to begin to understand the problem with dementia. See, Don, the real challenge is that the children are the forgotten people. Mom and Dad spend so much time working to try and take care of Mom and Dad, they don't take the time to explain to the children what's going on in Grandma or Grandpa's brain. So you can buy it at Amazon.com, or you can order it through your local bookstore, or any online bookstore besides Amazon has it available. Why Can't Grammy Remember Me? Illustrations are spectacular. A story by Dan Perkins.
Your runaway bestseller, new book.
Why Can't Grammy Remember Me by Dan Perkins.
Well, Dan, what do you think about today's guest?
I thought they were terrific. We had great diversity. We had some really good ideas on small business and what they can do with credit and how they can save money with the gentleman from Spent. So I think there was a lot of good stuff. Again, continuing the idea that we are on the air to try and help small businesses grow their businesses and start them. And again, we had content today that dealt with both. And as in the past, if you didn't get all of this show, you can go to our website, recalculating.biz, and look at past shows and expand your education, how you can be better at what you're doing in a small business.
Agreed. Great show, Dan.
Thank you for joining us on Recalculating. We hope the information you received on today's episode was helpful to you in starting and growing your business. Please go to our website, recalculating.biz, to contact us, to listen to past shows, and see special offers. Until next time, remember, if you grow, we grow. Join us next week for more helpful ideas to make your business a great success. Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.